You know, run a live show, and what happens is you lose a guest here and there.
Gabe, the bass player, got sick, so I'll have to reschedule him for a later time. But will be. We still have Charlene Chambliss is here to talk to us and educate us about natural language processing, which is something I know nothing about. So.
Yeah, it's natural language processing is almost always tied with terms like machine learning. It's taking lots of sets of data and running them through a system that allows us to have this experience where we can learn a lot through typically unstructured information. That's kind of what it was made for, was that in the early days, there was all this stuff that had to fit exactly in the right spots, and then computers would know what to do with it. And now there's kind of willy-nilly. And in a world where there's texts and blog posts and news stories and way too much information for one human entity to connect with, that's the deal. So we got Charlene Chambliss
in solving problems so that we don't have to do boring, tedious things.
Right.
That's what it's for. But I found Charlene on Twitter because I said, hey, who's really smart that I can learn from? And she was one of the people that you find people recommended on Twitter. So I blame you if this doesn't work out.
Highly recommended, Charlene. That's the thing. You better be good. All right. I see Len's here. I see Chloe's here. I see the whole gang.
Chloe sent me cupcake pops, like little cake pops.
That sounds very delicious. That sounds like a birthday gift.
I know. It was the best.
Yeah. When's your birthday again?
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
Not today.
Not today.
Not yesterday when I got cake pops, but I ate them anyway. I was like, you got to eat them when you get them.
They sound cake pop delicious to me.
So good. You really only need one though, and I have like 12, so.
Well, then you only need 11 more times.
I don't know what I'm going to do. Stuff full of cake, I guess.
What I would do.
Share them.
Kat's here because she wants to learn about natural language processing.
So, no, I think what most people fail to appreciate is just how much impact this could have on your life and making it better. So you don't have to do boring things that are tedious.
I mean, there's a lot to it.
And my arcade shirt that I got as an early birthday present too, and I'm so happy. So I was like, I'm going to put my arcade hair on.
Arcade hair to go with the arcade shirt.
Right.
Well, let's grab Charlene on before I start making up things, because I am male.
Too late.
I will absolutely.
You were saying some wild crap. I was like,
that was reasonable. I think what I said was reasonable, Charlene. What do you think? I mean, it sounded like a conversation.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Is that part of it too? Like, can you look through tech? Here's a question. So they've used NLP, natural language processing. They've used it to do things like try to suss out secret terrorist communication networks and things like that. That's one of the really clever ways, because it turns out that terrorists found that if we chat on video game chat rooms, no one would think to find them there and stuff like that. That's the glamorous side. What's the side you get to work on?
Great question. So the side that I get to work on right now is helping to detect disinformation and misinformation in the news. So we were chatting a little bit about this before, but essentially what we're doing is we are classifying articles as to whether or not they contain a dispute, and then we kind of go through and look at all the different entities, so all the different people and maybe the organizations who have made statements on either side, and then we extract those and present them so that the analysts who pay for our product can understand a bit better what this dispute is about.
Who makes the product that you represent?
Oh, I work at Primer AI. Yeah, so primer.ai if you want to check out our really very cool website.
Sounds really
honestly cool. It's one of the coolest websites.
It would have to be, but it probably knows a lot about you as soon as you click in there.
This is a field that, in some ways it's been around for quite a bit. In some ways it's only really kind of come into its own the last 5 or so years, maybe 10 years, where it's really getting deeply dove, so to speak. Natural language processing, there's also that other part of it, natural language understanding, which is sort of even further back upstream. That's all syntax and stuff. You don't work on that part of things, right? You're further down.
I wouldn't say that NLU is necessarily only syntax. I mean, that
semantics, that sort of thing.
It's kind of arguable which is which. I think both tasks, I mean, all tasks involve like a little bit of both.
Gotcha.
Because like you can't have good processing unless there's some degree of understanding going on there.
But that's the technology behind things like, for instance, Gmail. Gmail gets a piece of mail in and decides before you see it that this is a promotion. That's that, right? NLP and NLU, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that they would do that would typically be to maybe look at the sender, see if they're on like a list of, you know, promotion affiliated. So like if they're a retailer or something like that, it's like, oh, this might be a promotion. They could also look at, I mean, that would be just a regular algorithm as opposed to NLP. But the way that NLP could be used here is they might actually look at the text of the email. And if it says like sale or like 20% off or something like that, then that would be a pretty good indicator that it's a promotion.
In the process of this, there's a whole lot of people out here trying to learn and grasp what you're saying. So one of the things you said you're working on right now, for instance, is disputing whether or not news is considered accurate or you know, irrefutable or anything like that. And of course, there's always going to be refutes, as you said. There's always going to be disputes, you know, the innocent until proven guilty and all that sort of a thing. But how are you weighting and scoring the information, and how do you decide what's good enough, at least in earlier passes, and then what? Well, I'll start there. How do you do that? How do you sort of weight that in sort of vaguely human terms?
That's a good question. Currently, we don't make any like judgments as to what is good information. We kind of leave that up to the analyst to decide who is a trustworthy source of information. So if a certain entity makes a claim, maybe they're, you know, a higher up official in China or something like that, then they might think like, oh, they're going to have a certain perspective on this issue, as opposed to, I don't know, a random CNN reporter or something like that.
Interesting.
And so there's no weighting that goes on within the product. It's really that we're, you know, as long as the claim that's being made seems like a good quality claim, which is kind of like a wishy-washy way of us saying like it's not grammatically incorrect and it's like a readable piece of text that makes sense, then we will present that to the user.
The other thought I have is that when anyone ever talks about AI right now, and everybody talks about things like NLP, but even more so things like facial recognition and all the kind of work that's being done in that space with this, bias, racial bias exists in massive amounts. And that the fact that applying this science is not, we accidentally say, oh, it's science, so it's clean, but it's not. Do you approach that at Primer? Do you have talks about that? Is that a part of the conversation about when you're doing the work you're doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a whole Slack channel of folks at the company who are interested in making sure that our algorithms are not biased. And we've actually done a number of experiments on some of the main models that we use in the product. So for example, I recently got like a big representative corpus of documents from all over the world. And I ran our named entity recognition model on it, where named entity recognition is essentially an algorithm that extracts people and locations and organizations and miscellaneous like names of papers and stuff like that from text. And what I found was that our model was actually not biased, thankfully, by country of origin of the publication that the document came from. And so we're doing experiments like that all the time to make sure that we are not unfairly excluding anybody from what's being shown in the product.
So what's this good for, if you'll excuse the colloquialism, but you know, if somebody's living life right now not at all concerned with things like natural language processing, like what's the impact this could have on their life? What things are already affecting their life involving NLP that they don't know about?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So it would be fair to be not especially thinking about it right now at this point, because the main applications of NLP right now are in kind of the commercial space. So a lot of automation is fed by NLP. So for example, a lot of companies will use classification models to classify their incoming like customer support tickets. And what that does is it kind of sorts them into different buckets, and that makes it a lot easier for their customer support people to kind of go through and maybe like reuse certain kinds of responses and stuff like that. Maybe that's annoying as the customer, but but it definitely helps them get their jobs done a lot faster.
Yeah, well, I want my answer faster too, so I think that's fair.
Exactly. And so you get helped faster. Kind of everyone wins to some extent. Yeah, so that's a good example of how it's being used commercially. In terms of how, I mean, you're already benefiting from it as a consumer of content, especially because lots of content is described by text to some extent. So, you know, if you've ever let's see, what's a good example? I was going to say like topics on a news site or something, but those are often like editorially curated. But let's say you had like, you know, let's say you have an Evernote account and you have tons of notes, and you're like, what are all these notes about? I have like 10,000 notes because I've been using this for 10 years or something like that. Then you can actually run a topic extraction model on those, and you can like group your notes into different topics. And then so that you don't have to manually label them, they're already kind of grouped by subject matter to some extent. And so NLP can actually do a lot for us to kind of organize like big corpuses of information so that we don't necessarily have to go through and actually look at every single one.
Carol had a question. Can you bucket support requests by how irate they are?
Absolutely. That's called sentiment analysis.
Carol also wonders, what did you study and how much did you learn at school versus on the job?
Oh, cool question. So I actually did not study engineering or computer science at all in school. I studied psychology in my undergrad, and then I went back to school for a master's degree in statistics once I decided that I wanted to get into sort of the data science space. I didn't really, I wasn't committed to NLP at that point. And
so you're like a nerd. I love this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as far as how much I learned at school versus on the job, like I did learn a lot at school because the statistics degree is actually very helpful for NLP, because you have to kind of know, you have to know some advanced math, like, you know, linear algebra and graduate level statistics, for example. But you don't, I mean, you're not literally like deriving equations on the job most of the time because the computer does the computations for you. You just have to know kind of like the general mathematical properties. It's like how, you know, a chemist could be better at cooking by knowing a little bit about the chemistry and how the different molecules interact and what the chemical reactions are. Like that's the way that it helps me.
A fun conversation happening in the comments here about swearing and whether it makes your wait longer or shorter. Like, are they listening? Because I say all sorts of things.
I've heard that actually about the phone support systems.
Like, that's like great music. That's really helping my mood.
Yeah, totally.
So there's a bunch of humans that think about this all in terms of just one thing, which is when will Skynet take over and kill us all? And it's a very common thought. It's Elon Musk actually is a little nervous about that. He tends to voice his weird complaints about it, that AI is going to wreck us all. We're all going to die. And so I was thinking about, in some ways, I read one of your blog posts, the Moby Dick blog post on Primer, and it kind of walks through how different methods like Rouge and Blanc and everything do or don't score analysis very well. And one of the things that I was learning about was the fact that it's not really there yet. Like it's like there's a lot of ways to go, and there's a lot of human nudging to make it good. But what I thought about is, a few years ago, we were all watching those Boston Dynamic robots, and we're all laughing because they were really crappy and they're not good. And now they can dance in syncopation. Now they can open and close doors. They can do lots of things, and they can run upstairs. Like, you can't even be on the second floor and escape a robot now. I feel like where you are with stuff, and not you, but like the industry at large, there's still a whole lot of humans going, well, why did it say that, going on? But then there's going to be this weird moment. There's going to be this weird flash of light where everything gets a lot smarter. How do you feel? How do you sort of like judge the industry right now?
Yeah, this is a fun subject because I happen to be a little bit contrarian compared to a lot of NLP researchers who are like super duper concerned about, you know, AI taking over the world. I tend to think that, you know, like you said, it's not really there yet. The NLP models specifically seem to struggle a lot with common sense. and like understanding of how physics works in the real world, and like things that can and can't be true at the same time, and that kind of like logical reasoning that only really humans can do at this point. And so really until we solve that, that would probably be kind of the inflection point that unlocks a lot more applications of NLP and really applying it to do tasks that only humans can do at this point.
I like that answer. James is here from LinkedIn. Hi, James. He says, this is awesome and very interesting because we're researching and implementing sentiment analysis where I work at present.
I'm so excited. Awesome. People are watching on LinkedIn and we're talking about something for once that makes sense on LinkedIn.
For once.
Usually it's not at all. It'd be like felt art or, you know, mudlarking or technology. Yeah, literally nothing that would make sense on LinkedIn. So this is kind of fun. I'm glad you're here, James, today of all days. What comes first, art or reality? Just saying. Oh, like Terminator was prescient.
Right. Well, listen, that's a really important and true question. I think about it all the time because a lot of science and technology came from watching Star Trek. A whole lot of scientists watched Star Trek. That's why there were flip phones, because there were communicators. Every human who got a flip phone was like, doo, 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 even though it never did it. Right. So when you watch things like Terminator, someone out there is thinking this would suck if robots took over the world. And someone else is thinking, wow, if I could actually make a robot that smart, that it could actually figure out which door to open.
You could figure out which profanity to use based on the situation. Yeah.
But just like how Kyle Reese had to go back to find out his origin story and, you know, try to help Sarah Connor before John Connor was born. I need to ask Charlene, what were you at like age 8? You know, you're on the playground, you're a big baseball fiend or something like that. And you're like smacking the ball against the wall. What made you say
childhood?
Yeah, I get the whole thing. And then you'd get lunch, and the lunch would be like a turkey sandwich, but never with any kind of cheese because that's gross. Yeah. So what happened that you thought, I think I will go into sentiment and analytics, and I think I'll learn advanced math, and I think this is what I'm going to do. Like, you couldn't possibly have been writing that in your notebook, like, you know, unstructured data forever.
I wish. No, actually, I wanted to be a chemical engineer for a long time. So like in high school, I would say I really liked chemistry, and I wanted to funny enough, I was like, healthy food is hard to eat. Like, why do I hate salads so much? And so I was like, what if I became a flavor chemist? Then I could just like design flavors and make healthy food taste better. And that I thought I was like a genius for coming up with this.
My dad just made that comment before you said that sentence. You have a long way from flavoring veggies to make them taste better. Oh, yeah. You've come a long way from flavoring veggies to make it taste better. Okay. Oh, he must have read your bio. I get where he's going now. Is this somewhere on your website that you said that you might have wanted to do this when you grew up?
Yeah, I said that in an interview. So he might have read an interview. Yeah.
He's doing his homework.
Nice.
That's awesome. While listening to her talk, you do your homework while talking to you. So, I mean, either way really works.
Yeah. So the way that I got into it actually was like after I graduated undergrad. So I got my psychology degree from Stanford. I started working in marketing. And obviously, no offense to you guys, but I didn't really feel like it was my thing.
None taken.
And so
I'm a lawyer. I don't care.
Yeah, I know this show is a little bit about marketing and stuff. So I didn't want to crap on marketing there, but it wasn't for me. And so I wanted to figure out like what can I do that's that I think is going to be a little bit more stimulating and like that I can get paid a little bit more for because I live in the Bay Area and stuff is expensive. And I kind of landed on data science because I saw that a lot of people were using it for just really cool stuff. Like, you know, mapping poverty in Africa using satellite imagery and like doing remote sensing in the forest to detect deforestation and stuff like that. And I was like, man, that's really cool seeing all these social impact applications of it. And so that was kind of what inspired me to go into data science. And then I ended up in NLP because I think it's particularly friendly to like people with unconventional backgrounds like me. And then also because I've just had kind of an affinity for language my whole life.
Charlene, stick around. Stick around. I forgot because I can't do one thing. I can't do one thing. Sponsored by PubSite. If you wrote a book made out of unstructured data, it's going to be poop. But if you wrote a pretty not bad book, you can put it up here and use PubSite, pub-site.com. It's a site for authors. You can make a website super easy. It would take you 2 hours. Once Charlene gets better at her job, it'll take you 4 minutes because the machine will just turn it on. Yep. Boop, here's your site. There's
make my site look like a bag of Fritos.
That's right. Okay. There's an internal website coming in the future, but right now you have to click all the buttons, and you're a paltry human, so you're not going to do very well. So
it's very easy, and this is pre-built with all the things you need as an author to promote yourself and your book, your appearances, and things like that. So go check it out. It's ridiculously easy, and it's just $19.99 a month after a 14-day free trial. So you could actually have your whole website set up in like a couple hours and get 2 free weeks.
Yeah. Now, listen, if you want to find people way smarter than you that make you feel like a bug, you can make your own interview on StreamYard. See Brogan on Misha StreamYard, make your own show. 2 people bought from me yesterday, bought and started their new show yesterday.
I was many new shows. It's really exciting.
And I watch them. I check in on these shows. So
I remember when everybody was like, Carrie, I want you to co-host a show with me. I'm like, no, you don't. You just want StreamYard. That's all they needed.
And then they were like, okay, and they left you alone.
Yeah, exactly.
So it worked. See Brogan,
my email inbox went down to a trickle. See Brogan,
big news. Big news. StreamYard was acquired by Hopin. And sometimes that's scary news because it's like, oh, what's going to change? How bad is it going to be? And they're like, no, they're letting us do our own thing here. But don't worry, we'll get some of their best stuff.
And you're like,
yeah, see, Terminator came. It's Charlene's AI has taken over StreamYard. So there we go. Anybody hungry? It's a little early on the Bay Area, but everyone else, let's get some sausage going. Johnsonville.
Sausage for breakfast.
It turns out Johnsonville makes breakfast sausages as well.
Maple ones too, and they're really good.
Also turns out that they sell Johnsonville sausages at the other of the 2 grocery stores in my very little town. So I made a pea pod order that will show up this weekend. So I will be restocking Johnsonville to go with all my plant-based delicious plantiness. There we go. Johnsonville.
So I have a question for Charlene.
Let's bring her back. Hey, Charlene, question.
Charlene, can you like build a bot to do your job for you so you can just do things like the show and like not work anymore? Or
I wish. No, actually, Chris made a funny comment earlier about it being like, oh, why did the model say that? And that's actually like 80% of my job. So
well, damn.
Yeah, the model unfortunately can't analyze its own errors and mistakes. So I have to do that for now.
Valentina asks if you have any tips that you could offer moms to cultivate an interest in STEM in their little girls. Valentina has little girls.
Yeah. Actually, I should just point you to my mom because she did an amazing job at this. So one thing she did was, she would buy me lots of little science kits when I was younger. So like I liked putting stuff together and kind of taking it apart. She would, she actually homeschooled me for a year in 3rd grade. And that was great because I could kind of just like study freely on my own time. And then once I was done with my homework for the day, I could play video games or whatever I wanted to do. And so I would say just cultivate that like freedom and exploration sort of instinct. And also make sure to like impart like how science actually positively impacts people's lives, because I feel like women in general are like more inclined to want to use their careers to want to help people. And so if you can draw the connection between what is otherwise maybe perceived as kind of a dry subject that's all about like equations and numbers and stuff, and you can connect it with like actually helping people, then I think you could get your daughters like more interested and like wanting to learn more about how they can use it for themselves.
Papa Brogan says he was dad trolling. He just got interested in your background story and had to chase it down. It's okay. You know what? I see it every day. Nice job with Chris.
And you know what? My dad is basically saying, you didn't do your job. You didn't ask her how she started, so I'll go find it myself.
We're getting to it.
We had it. I was just thinking about what video games Charlene played. I'm guessing that she played C++. I love sitting there at a private window.
Chris used to be a carnival barker where he'd guess your 8-year-old lunch, because when you were talking about Charlene's childhood and how she must have fantasized about being, a data person.
Yeah, unstructured data forever.
Forever.
I want to go back to the concept of that story, the how the analysis. The messiest science kits. You could teach them dirty bombs. I want to talk about how humans grade sentiment. Well, you know, you learn a lot in bomb making. There's chemistry in that. There's electronics.
Stop it.
You know what's going on right now? There's
Boom shakalaka. Yellow card, Brogan. And Brogan is going down like a bag of hammers tonight.
That's what's happening. Bomb making for children.
Listen, NLP is not good enough to listen to human language very well, especially when we overtalk each other. I'm safe from the robots. I had a point. Oh, yeah. So Blanc Rouge, all those kinds of guys, reading analysis. The one thing I was really struck with is when human took a look at the same thing. The human scored it the way I would have. Basically, there was an article that horse meat was found in a canned beef product. And so you know, when you hear that horse meat was found in a canned beef product, as you might presume, the grossest and worst part of that story is horse meat. Now, what the robot said was, nah, you know, there's something going on, or, you know, there was this beef product, and oh, by the way, a little horse meat's in it, right? Like, it didn't care. And then the human analysis was like, horse meat. So what I thought was, that's a thing. And that's something that has not yet been codified by your math. How do we work towards that?
Yeah. So right now, NLP models have no sense of like, oh, what's gross to humans, or like what, or even kind of more abstractly, like what is part of culture that makes this particular statement more relevant or less relevant. Sorry, what was the original question?
I don't know.
I don't know if you had one.
Although when you said cultural, that threw a thing in too, because there's some cultures that horse meat's great. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So
good news, new product. You know.
Yeah, in another culture, maybe the model would have been right that there's nothing notable about that.
Good job,
but,
Romania.
Yeah, right now, I guess. I guess you would have to kind of train specific models for specific cultures right now if you wanted to kind of clue them in on what's gross and not gross. And then that could be kind of latently represented in the embeddings of the document, where the embedding is really just like a vector of numbers, like you said.
Would it be able to detect, do you think, like detect the culture the way that like Google Translate can detect a language?
Potentially, yeah. So there are probably various markers and cues that it could kind of rely on, and heuristics. But all of that would be like latently represented. Like we wouldn't be able to actively feed that in at the moment.
There'd be outliers. Throw it off for everybody.
Look, I just want to point out something. Cultures including Mexico, Switzerland, Kazakhstan, Belgium, Japan, Germany, Indonesia, Poland, and China are among the nations where eating horse meat is no big deal.
Why are we doing this now? Like, you're talking to Charlene now. Stop Googling where people eat horse
meat. An NLP article about horse meat was the comment, and it was related to NLP.
Stop.
I'm not mad.
You're very nice.
No, most of my day is not number crunching. Oh, and thank you. Actually, most of my day is probably, I would say, like half meetings and communication, because there's a lot of communication involved in like building the right things, instead of just building whatever you think is cool or like tinkering with experiments endlessly. And then the other half is actually just programming a lot of the time, and then the computer does most of the computation. So I'm kind of telling the computer like, hey, get this data, run these operations on it, and then tell me what happens. And so I'm using Python, the programming language, for that most of the time.
Which is one of the ones that's better for doing lots of textual stuff. It's like it's a hardcore text language. You don't have to have all the other bells and whistles because you're never going to call on them. Oh, that's cool. That was what I was told a million years ago when I said, what language should I learn? And they said Python because you're an idiot. Okay.
So Python is great because it doesn't have a lot of like just weird syntax rules and stuff. Like, you know, if you were to learn, oh gosh, I guess C or something, you know, you have to terminate all of your statements in a semicolon, and like there's all kinds of weird quirks and stuff. But like Python kind of abstracts away a lot of that, and you can, I'm not going to say it's like writing natural language because it's not, but it's significantly easier to learn than most other programming language because there are so few quirks.
Python, that's what the kids are learning in school. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I learned Python in school. The first computer science class I took at Stanford, we learned Java. It was like a teaching version of Java or something, and it was just awful. It's exactly one of those boilerplate languages with like tons and tons of random words that you have no idea what they do, and you're just like, how do I just tell the computer to like add 2 numbers or something?
Try basic logo.
Oh yeah,
basic logo. Yeah.
Yeah, way back. I am terrified. By the way, I spent half of my job trying not to display the wrong banners. We had a previous guest give us a discount code for a site where you can purchase sex toys. It's like one of her many jobs that she has. Nice. And I'm terrified I'm going to like display it by accident while you're talking. I'm trying to
during this. Hey, yeah, you should learn Python. And by the way, good vibrator tail.
Yeah, this is not Sharon Paul. She does not sell sex toys. Please, not just
my gosh.
Please. Thank you.
So
maybe that should be my next side project.
Well, that leads me somewhere because I had the thought of, so where does this go? What does old Charlene look back on with some silver in those curls and go, here I am now, like a Star Trek episode where we're now 20 years out or something. Where are you headed?
Where am I headed? I mean, obviously, I like this job. I like what I work on, so I'm planning to do that for at least a few more years. But, you know, in the future, I would like to potentially start my own business, maybe having to do with machine learning and maybe not. And I've thought about going into venture capital and investing because I would really like to explore impact investing, but I don't know. I haven't decided. I kind of tend to change my plans on like a 2 or 3 yearly sort of basis. So right now I'm really just focusing on being a better engineer and making sure that I can build the coolest things possible that help people.
What do you think you're learning now that's going to let you be able to run a company like that or be a better investor? What are some of the skills you think you might be able to port forward?
I mean, mainly programming skills right now, because if you're starting a company that's, you know, an app based on machine learning or something like that, or like even a services company, like it's very useful to like have those technical skills and to be able to almost kind of do everything yourself, because that kind of stretches out the amount of time that you can survive without like hiring additional people, which really can increase kind of your burn costs and stuff like that. So I would say like, don't be afraid of programming. You know, like the learning landscape for programming right now is better than ever. Python is really easy to learn. I mean, I don't want to make you feel bad if you tried to learn Python and you found it hard, because programming in general is hard, but Python specifically is one of the easier ways to get into it. So if you can muscle through and kind of put yourself on a schedule and commit to it, then you can really accomplish
harder than marketing.
You know, now that I know that you also have empathic skills, and the 2 times that you said Python's easy, you saw me wince. Yes, I did all right. But you know, it's like when you learn a foreign language, but you don't have anyone to speak it with. Like I didn't have any cool projects to do with my Python, so I was just ordering things and whatever. So we have 2 more parts of the show, and then we get out of here.
Carol wants to know what impact investing is.
Oh, so impact investing is essentially just regular investing, except you're focused on like making a positive impact with your investing. So instead of investing in, you know, traditional oil energy stocks or something like that, you're investing in maybe smart energy companies.
Not like strip mining.
Yeah, exactly. And it turns out, I mean, this is just kind of the research and the hype that I've read about it, but it turns out that it can actually be as profitable as regular investing. So you're not necessarily losing out financially by exploring these more up and coming and innovative and positive solutions instead of just kind of investing in the old guard.
I think just investing in underrepresented, you know, owner businesses, like women-owned businesses, people of color-owned businesses.
Absolutely, yeah. Because women
avoid a lot of problems.
Yeah, they often start their businesses in a way that's kind of focused around serving underserved communities, which is, you know, a form of positive impact. So that can also be a great place to invest. Especially
if you can still show the percentages and show the money for it. So
exactly, yeah.
It's got to be the both, right? It's got to be the both. It's not a charity. So we have a couple more things to do. We have person of the day, and then I have a backpack question for you.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Even though this one is, you know, self-impacting, I will say that we'll give it to Kat. because how much Carrie laughed out loud
That was
when
good.
that went out. Chris is a little like AI with those gaps of judgment and what you shouldn't say. Well, you know, the thing is, it's been forever. The joke is they take me everywhere twice. The second time is to apologize. So
yeah, he'd be like, "Does this make me look fat?" He'd be like, "Yeah."
Yep, makes you look fat. But maybe your fat makes you look fat. So then we have the last question, which is the backpack question, which is what goes in your backpack. Now, this could be something physical, like an apple. It could be something metaphorical, like a better use of time. It could be anything you want, just sort of the one thing, though. What are some of your favorites, Carrie?
I like pride when Horacio Garcia Rojas said pride, like in where you come from. Because he's an actor from Mexico City, but he's like, you know, an actor and he wants to bring his art to the world, but as someone from Mexico City. So I love that. Vulnerability, sense of humor has come up now and then. So what about you? I think I know some of your favorites, Chris.
Yeah. So one of my favorites is 5-time beatbox champion Butterscotch. She said a banana because it makes a different sound in your mouth when you eat a banana, and an avocado. A clown once told us an avocado. So, Charlene, Chambliss, what goes in your backpack?
The first thing that comes to mind is probably a can-do attitude, because I think that like a lot of what I've managed to accomplish in the last few years of making this big transition from like you know, non-technical background to this rather technical field is just having to kind of have the self-confidence to believe that I could learn the stuff, because I was kind of scared of math and programming before. I mean, not scared, but like I had felt like I wasn't as good at it as I was at other things. And then also a can-do attitude in the sense of like being willing to do kind of grunt work. So like there's actually a lot of grunt work involved in my current job, which is just like, you know, communicating with data labelers who are going to be like labeling my data and giving me back the data, and like kind of just digging through different results and writing the same script a million different times. And it's just important to kind of keep in mind that like all really good work that gets done requires some amount of grunt work. And if you really want to accomplish something that's important to you, you have to be willing to kind of grind through that, and not give up when it feels hard or it feels kind of sucky.
Kind of sucky being a technical term with which I am familiar.
That's I think there's sentiment.
I forgot. Who said that? Oh, that was DJ Cumberbund.
DJ Cumberbund. An extra
That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
out of nowhere.
Dude.
He's a funny kind of guy. Oh, I just wonder some days if my grandmother had still been alive to learn something like NLP. She did not have access to that sort of technology in her time, and instead she just sort of had her own version of sentiment analysis. So, for instance,
her brain?
she'd be thinking about something and she'd tell me, "Let me tell you what I think about that."